not frightened 'cause we're enlightened. Liar, liar, pants on fire. We know you're lying and we ain't buying.
Bin Laden you can't find, no child left behind. Justice fired, Brownie hired, Downing Street memos. Inflation corporations, we have no affiliations. Cutting trees, missing bees, food with GMOs. Watch out for the Arab man, when will we attack Iran? Ancient sites, Phoenix lights, there's abductions in the night. Constitution usurpation, Iraqi occupation, animal mutilation, drowning us in medication.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. We're not frightened 'cause we're enlightened. Liar, liar, pants on fire. We know you're lying and we ain't buying.
Valerie Plame, Abu Ghraib, who's making aspartame? Rumsfeld, civilians held, Rupert Murdoch. Cities flooding, corporate funding, CIA, Enron, Pentagram, Pentagon funding black ops. Our shape-shifting queen, White House hookers obscene, soon-to-be abortion bans, Illuminati white sands, Walter Reed homelessness, Dick Cheney's callousness, fixed presidential race, Katrina damage disgrace.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. We're not frightened 'cause we're enlightened. Liar, liar, pants on fire. We know you're lying and we ain't buying.
Mind control, Darfur administration's just its whore. 9/11, we won't tell official story doesn't gel. Michael Moore getting mocked, middle class losing stock. Freedom fries, veteran cries, Bin Laden family ties. MK Ultra paperclip, Gulf War syndrome, read my lips. Drug sales, beached whales, spraying us with chemtrails. National ID cards, no need for electric cars. Take all of your vaccinations, church and state, no separation.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. We're not frightened 'cause we're enlightened. Liar, liar, pants on fire. We know you're lying and we ain't buying.
End times coming soon, structures on the moon, politicians throwing mud, let's put in the blue blood. Waco, Texas terrorism, we the people locked in prison. Banking system is corrupt, we're going bankrupt. Media spewing fear, we're not safe anywhere. Immigrants at our borders, let's bring in the new world order.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. We're not frightened 'cause we're enlightened. Liar, liar, pants on fire. We know you're lying and we ain't buying.
Children's health care is rejected, presidents are selected, Congress, why were you elected? Human rights go unprotected. Tax cuts, global warming, Kissinger, new laws forming, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, interstellar storyteller. Cities being revamped, building concentration camps, microchips in your arm, there's no reason for alarm. Bilderbergers, shock and awe, it's de facto martial law. Evil men without faces, soon you'll have to face this nation.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. We're not frightened 'cause we're enlightened. Liar, liar, pants on fire. We know you're lying and we ain't buying. Liar, liar, pants on fire. We're not frightened 'cause we're enlightened. Liar, liar, pants on fire. We know you're lying and we ain't buying. Liar, liar, pants on fire.
Howdy, and welcome to another edition of Omega Presents. Today is a great one. We're going to be showing you information not just about what happened on 9/11, but why it happened, how it happened, and maybe what we can do about it. So what we're going to be concentrating on today is a little bit of Webster Tarpley. Here, I'll show it to this other camera. And Webster Tarpley is a terrorologist by his own account, I guess. He's one of the leading experts in false flag operations. So anyway, he's the author of this book, 9/11 Synthetic Terror. I recommend it to everyone. It's required reading. If you don't have this book, you don't really have a clue why anything is happening. So with that, we're going to go for a total of about 20 minutes almost. We're going to see Webster Tarpley talking to a British radio interviewer, and he starts out talking about the false flag operation of November 5th. What was that? I forget. But anyway, let's roll in the video and enjoy.
There you go, that's on the summer before there, Patsy Gallant. Let's talk to my guest of the show now. Webster Tarpley. He's written a book called 9/11 Synthetic Terror, and also George Bush. More importantly, he's doing a talk tonight in Bristol at the QEH Theatre in Jacobswell Road in the city. The talk is called From Guy Fawkes to 9/11, 400 Years of State-Sponsored Terrorism. And you are, and I've never heard this phrase before, a terrorologist.
Well, yes, I guess that's the phrase that has been applied by the managers of this tour,
Okay.
And I guess there is something to it, because what I try to study is, I'm a historian, but unfortunately because of the times we live in, you have to pay a lot of attention to state-sponsored synthetic terror, which is going on all around us, which is used to manipulate the world.
Well, let's talk about that, because we're often, and we've talked about it on this program before, we're often, a lot of people feel made to feel deliberately fearful of what's going on in society. And we kind of assume this is a fairly new thing. But I suppose what you're saying here, actually, there's nothing new about this at all.
No, it's not new. It's been going on for 400 years and really more than that. But in this case, because of Guy Fawkes, 402 years ago now, that was, of course, a state plot. That was state-sponsored terrorism. Guy Fawkes is simply the most famous patsy in world history. In other words, he's a useful idiot, a fanatic, psychotic, whatever he is.
Right.
Part of this clique of Catholic plotters, which had actually been assembled by Lord Robert Cecil, Salisbury, the Prime Minister of the country, right? Basically the controller of Queen Elizabeth, well, primarily James at this point, but the father had been the controller of Queen Elizabeth also. So Cecil was concerned. He wanted to make sure he stayed as Prime Minister. He wanted to make sure that Catholic repression went on, because they're always playing this dividing and conquering. You have to play one part of the population against another.
Right.
The Catholics are either a very large minority, or they may even be the majority. Nobody really knows, because it's all driven underground. So he also is interested in getting a war with Spain going as part of this idea of keeping himself in power. So what he does is he works through two patsies who are double agents. And one of them is Catesby, and the other one is Percy. These are parts of this group of 6 or 7 plotters. Right. So they're double agents, and they visit Cecil in his mansion at night. They're seen going in and out. So Fawkes is one who doesn't know what's going on. These other two think they know what's going on, but eventually they're going to get killed too. They're liquidated in the course of it. Right. And of course, basically after this, you have 200 years of war, first with Spain, then you get Titus Oates and the Popish plot of 1678. That redirects it against France. Now, from there to today, 9/11, what is it? It's, of course, a provocation coming from the bowels of the CIA, the Pentagon, the National Security Agency, the only agencies that could create the effects you see. No air defense for 2 hours, controlled demolition of huge buildings, including Building 7, which was never hit by a plane.
We did have the caretaker of here on the show, actually, talking about that and how he witnessed what happened on
Cruise
that.
missile hits the Pentagon, airplane in Shanksville blown up in midair, essentially pulverized, or well, we don't really know. And all of that, of course, has to be done by the intelligence agencies. It's done.
The key question here is, though, if all this is true, and there are still many people who doubt what you're saying, of course, although I'm sure there are a lot of people equally who agree with what you're saying, why hasn't this been blown wide open? Why don't the American people actually call some sort of revolt here? Because clearly, if that is all true, there's been a huge, massive lie.
The latest best poll we have is that 50% of the U.S. population approximately believe the government is lying about some big thing. 25% believe the government is lying about 9/11 in totality.
Right.
16% believe the story. So the people are essentially with us. Who's not with us, of course, is the media, publishing, the government, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the universities, the institutions, which are oligarchical at the top, don't believe it, because there's an oligarchical consensus in favor of the idea that the only way to organize U.S. society and the world is around this absurd myth of terrorism, right? And the creation of a new enemy image to replace the Soviets, right? No more Soviets, no more communists. Therefore, you need Arabs, Muslims as the enemy image.
Why do you need an enemy image? Why do you need this fear?
It's what Orwell understood very well. Is if you want to have an unjust, hierarchical society with a completely irrational pecking order, you've got to have an external enemy that can always be used to justify the injustice that's going on economically, socially, on the inside, right? You were talking about politicians who ignore voters. Well, how can you do that? Well, you always say, we had a case that Bush's budget came out, he was cutting health, education, and welfare spending, and they asked the budget director, why are you cutting health, education, and welfare? Because we have to fight the global war on terror. So it's a ready-made blanket excuse for every monstrosity that comes out of these reactionary thinkers.
Whatever you think about 9/11, and I think, you know, again, when we've done phone-ins on this program, lots of people think that there were a lot of highly suspicious things going on with 9/11. And I don't believe the official story, but there is still, nevertheless, a threat out there, isn't there? We have to look at what's going on. Don't we have to look at what's going on in Iraq at the moment?
Well, no, I wouldn't look at it that way at all. Your threat right now is simply this. Cheney and the Cheney faction, desperate because of this world financial breakdown crisis, we're heading into dollar hyperinflation, we're heading into a worldwide banking panic, and you've seen the beginnings here.
Indeed.
We also had Countrywide Bank in California, Citibank, other big institutions, very big trouble on that line. The Cheney group, and when I say Cheney, I'm referring to a faction, not just this alcoholic guy who can't shoot straight with his 3 heart attacks and 4 pacemakers and a quadruple bypass, who's always scowling. The faction is determined to have a new 9/11. In other words, the real issue of 9/11 is the repeat performance. Give you a case in point. On the 29th and 30th of August, a B-52 intercontinental bomber was loaded with 6 nuclear cruise missiles. Warhead about 150 kilotons, 6 or 7 times Hiroshima. Goes from North Dakota to Louisiana on the 30th of August. That's the jumping off point to do a direct bombing run into the Middle East to attack Iran. And that was the goal. Except, as far as we can tell, some Air Force personnel said, no, we don't accept illegal orders. These neocon fascist madmen are not going to make us into war criminals. And they said no. The plane came to a halt. The incident was announced on September 5th, the rogue B-52. Now, 6 of those people are now dead under very mysterious circumstances. 1 in July, but 5 after the case. A captain, a lieutenant, and a security man from the U.S. Air Force, dead in traffic accidents, a kind of grassy knoll in connection with these 2 things. One of the cruise missiles is reported to be missing by Wayne Madsen, who is a very reputable internet columnist who has contacts in the National Security Agency. Now, we've been trying to get the Congress to investigate this, and the Congress refuses. It's been on the front page of the Washington Post, big picture above the fold, and the Congress won't make a move. Kucinich has promised, Kucinich being a left-wing congressman who's running for president, has promised to hold hearings, but so far there are no hearings. If I were the British government, I would call in the American ambassador and say, we want explanations about this rogue B-52. What are you doing? On the 6th, the Israelis attacked Syria. Was the B-52 going to be part of an Israeli attack on Syria and Iran? And then on October 17th, we had the unthinkable. The President of the United States threatens Russia with World War III, because that was the content of that speech by Bush. Putin had said on the 16th, don't attack Iran. It is unacceptable. Bush has come back the next day, World War III. Putin has demanded that the U.S. set a timetable to get out, and he has also said, he's compared Bush to a madman running around with a razor, like Freddy. That was for Halloween. And more recently, Putin has said, we are in an equivalent of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
But that's now passed over, though, hasn't it? We now don't.
No. This is
well, I feel,
live.
you know, again, if you look at the media here in the UK, we seem to get the impression that actually they've made up again and everything's okay now.
I think that's absurd. If the U.S. is determined to put these missiles into Poland, that is a Cuban Missile Crisis. The U.S. is also pressing for the independence of Kosovo under what amounts to an Islamic fundamentalist government of the KLA.
Tell me this, though. I mean, if all this is true, and if this conspiracy theory is continuing, and you know, and if the American people are misled by the American media, and we know the American media are slightly unlike the British media, I think, although I think the sectors of the British media are getting there. We know the American media are slightly unlike the British media, I think, although I think the sectors of the British media are getting there. You are fed a much more insular kind of diet of news in America.
The most corrupt media in the world, I would say, although the competition is intense.
Well, yeah, okay. But there's so much stuff out there on the internet now. Most people, I would assume, in America, ignore it still and say, sorry, we just don't believe it? Because, let's face it, it's very easy to start a conspiracy theory.
Well, my first thing, conspiracy, it used to be a conspiracy theory, but now it's been proven. So it's not
why
a theory
aren't
anymore.
so if it's so obvious and it's so proven, why aren't the American people standing up and saying enough?
Well, some of them are.
But,
and
but
I
the
just
vast majority aren't,
I
are they?
cited the polling data. The problem is you have the Democratic Party, strangely enough, is more dedicated to the 9/11 myth than the Republicans, because the Democrats say we're the true church of the 9/11 myth.
Right.
Bush went astray into Iraq, but we are the ones who keep saying Bin Laden, Bin Laden, Al Qaeda, Al Qaeda, and now we have the U.S. destabilizing Pakistan. Interesting story. Cheney went to Pakistan at the end of February, and he said to Musharraf, guess what? You will now attack Iran with your Islamic bomb. And Musharraf, much to his credit, said no. And what you see, the hysteria right now, is a U.S.-British destabilization of Pakistan because he refused to join in the war against Iran.
Where does this all end, though? Because surely the credibility of the American government, if what you're saying is true, is in such tatters. How can they continue to, how can the American people, and indeed governments from around the world, continue to support them and accept what they're saying?
Well, we hope that they won't. I would say being a member of NATO right now is something like being a member of a suicide pact. I would not do it. I was in Canada. I urged them to rethink being a member of NATO. I would say the same thing here. That's your affair, but you really have to think
whether
you want to be dragged in.
And how does it end? Because if you follow this through to its logical conclusion, where do we end up?
Well, in the U.S. we have a history of producing these social movements at various times. I think right now, I would certainly say impeachment of Bush-Cheney is a mass movement. You can drive across the United States and you can see middle-class or even upper-middle-class neighborhoods with big signs, impeach him, impeach both of them, impeach Bush, impeach Cheney. That's a mass movement.
How long has he got to go now? It's about, what, 18 months, is it? Less than that?
January 20th, 2009. But
right.
Remember, the Spanish tactic, of course, is if you have big terrorism, you can declare a state of emergency and call off elections. And
do you think that might happen
discussed. I think that's a real danger. A lot of Democrats have these countdown clocks. You can buy a watch that tells you how many more days, hours, and minutes of Bush, except it's a fallacy, because that assumes that there's going to be legality. And the whole thing is what Cheney's thinking of is new 9/11, attack on Iran, and martial law. And there's no reason for it.
If there is an election and the Democrats do get back into power, as some people think they will, is that going to make the matter any better, or are they in on it as well?
It depends a little bit on who it is.
Right.
Mrs. Clinton, I'm afraid, is a warmonger who has actually tried to profile herself as being more aggressive on Iran than Bush. There was a phase of about 2 years where Bush was always saying, let the Germans and the French do the negotiation. Mrs. Clinton was attacking him from the right, from the warmonger side, saying, I'll attack Iran faster than he will, and I can get you European troops and European money that Bush can't get you. So Mrs. Clinton would be a disaster.
Right.
She would guarantee 8 more years of war in Iraq. And I think that is a growing... She voted for this Kyle Lieberman amendment.
Just talking about Iraq for a minute, what do we do about Iraq now? Because obviously we've got ourselves embroiled in this, and it's a mess. I mean, anybody who's seen what's going on in Iraq knows it's a mess. Do we pull out?
Absolutely pull out. I think
what does that do to the country?
The instinct of the British General Staff and so forth is correct. You have to get out of there. It's futile slaughter. However, the U.S. also has to get out at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to have 150,000 U.S. forces above Baghdad.
But you can't go into a country, totally destroy it, bring it to its knees, and then just leave it to sort it out.
No, I wouldn't do that either. I would have a comprehensive Marshall Plan for the economic reconstruction of the Middle East, from which all states in the region, including the Israelis, the Lebanese, everybody's been savaged by war, rebuild the whole place, make Jerusalem into a transportation hub. It's the point where Africa and Asia and Europe come together. It ought to be one of the most prosperous entrepôts and warehousing areas in the world, and you could do that, but you have to have peace. Now, the danger is, if you leave those U.S. forces in Iraq, eventually you're dealing with a very capable enemy. The whole U.S. situation right now is the U.S. supply line goes across the Iranian front, think of it, for 1,500 miles, and then you get to the land. It's 2 roads, each are 400 miles long, so-called Route Tampa, going from Kuwait City to Baghdad. And it's very easy to cut those supply lines. Everything goes up there. Gasoline, water, ammunition, fuel, everything. If you cut those, the U.S. forces are essentially pocketed. And then you have Dunkirk, if you're lucky, and Stalingrad, if you're not so lucky.
Who's ultimately pulling the strings behind all of this?
It is the Anglo-American financier establishment. It extends from the city of London to Wall Street and then to Washington.
It's about money, obviously, ultimately.
It's ultimately about world domination and the continuation of U.S.-British world domination. And this is what you see. The Bush-Blair combination is simply an expression of what's going on in the ruling elite. I would look at people like Rupert Murdoch, look at people like George Shultz, who was Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Labor, very important person. This is the neocon wing, again, I would say neocon or neo-fascist wing of the U.S. ruling elite, and they're the aggressive ones. There's another group, a body of opinion around James Baker and some others, which is more traditional imperialist, which says, play them against each other, but don't you get involved, right? In other words, divide and conquer, but not with your own forces. Whereas the neocons are one-trick ponies. You show a neocon a problem, he always has one answer. War, invade, bomb. Here's their perspective. U.S., Britain, and Israel against the world forever. This is no future for Britain or for anybody.
Look ahead 25 years from now. Where are we going to be with all this?
Well, I of course, maintain a great optimism. I think that under the blows of this crisis, we'll solve our biggest problem, which is lethargy, demoralization, apathy, passivity. You can already see the U.S. Voter turnout statistics are creeping up. The younger generation, on the whole, is more politically aware than its immediate predecessor. But right now, I would recommend, we have these movements, right? Anti-war, anti-globalization, impeachment, labor. We have lots of good movements. They tend to be single-issue movements. What you got to do is merge them, create a mass movement outside of the parties, independent of any financier control, because we have a lot of leftists who are controlled by George Soros and other financiers, but have a program, stop all wars, roll back the police state, impeach Bush Cheney. People have to be the beneficiaries of economics, not financiers.
Isn't this going to take
bankers,
almost like
and
a revolution?
9/11 truth. 9/11 truth.
Isn't this going to take the best part of a revolution to make this happen, though?
Yes, but I hope it's a political process. In
Sure.
other words, I think any notion of violence
again,
is absurd.
You see, we were saying earlier on the program about voting in elections, and we were saying, and a lot of people in this country feel as well, I think, many people always vote. Many people say, again on the phone, and they've said to me many times, what's the point in voting? Because they all do what they want to do anyway. You know, there's always an agenda
politics.
there.
You got to go beyond that. In other words, politics means activism. My slogan on this tour, because I'm trying to do something about this, is you have two choices.
Right.
Get active or get radioactive. And active means active. It doesn't mean voting every 4 years. It means getting engaged yourself as an activist. And what I say in the U.S. to people, of course, is you don't like the state of affairs, run for office. We are now looking for 469 people to help save the U.S. and the world, which is, we have an election next year, 435 members of the House, 34 members of the Senate. That's what we got to have, plus, of course, supporters. But we need candidates, basically, in every district who will say, again, no more wars, roll back the police state, impeach Bush Cheney, people rule, not bankers, 9/11 truth. And I think that's a package to begin with, right? And then obviously you've got to elaborate the economic part, where there's a lot of disagreement. That would take a while. But in this country, I heard your discussion. It sounds like some of your callers think that somehow holding office is a matter for the elite, and we're just the masses. Mrs. Pelosi, the current Speaker of the House, expressed the same idea from the other direction. She said she was sick and tired of peace demonstrators camping in front of her house.
Right.
And she said, those are merely advocates. We are leaders. And then she's trying to explain why she didn't impeach Bush, why she's voting the money for the Iraq War. It's time for such people to get the gate. In other words, they should be ushered to the door, thanked for their services, and sent into well-deserved retirement.
All right, interesting stuff. We're out of time, sadly. We could go on talking for hours. If you want to find out more, Webster will be there tonight at the QEH Theatre on Jacobswell Road at 7. Tickets are £5 on the door. First come, first served. Get along. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for being with us today.
I hope you can come.
Well, that gives you a lot to think about and a lot to talk about. And we're going to do something new today, for my show, I mean. Live call-in. We're going to put the number across the screen. It's 288-4442 and 288-4443. I mean 8. Well, anyway, it's on the screen. You can see it. How do you like this format? Does it remind any of you activists of anything? Anything reminiscent about somebody sitting around with a bunch of books on the table? Well, I hope it reminded you of Ace Hayes. He's, one of my heroes. I was introduced to the wonderful ability of cable access to communicate because I saw an Ace Hayes show, the secret government seminar. Now, I'm no Ace Hayes. I'm not even close. I don't know of many people who are. And I don't have a room of people here to talk to. But we're waiting for a live call-in. In the meantime, I'm going to roll in another video because we were talking about the financial crash in this last Webster Tarpley video. And I guess we have a phone call right now. Pardon? Go ahead, caller.
Yes, I was wondering, on all this information you're giving out, in the interview that was just shown, why is nobody doing anything besides the idea of having somebody run for a House representative office and maybe down the road you might get somebody in the door? Why doesn't somebody put a stop to it?
Well, that's a good question. And
we don't know how? We can't do it?
No, it's not that. It's that we have to get the message out, and every means possible, whether it's just talking to your friends and relatives or doing what I'm doing on a cable access show. I've also been a CB activist for a long time, talking just like this on the CB radio.
Don't you think truly the message is already out? Don't you think in Stanton, New Jersey, where the boneyard is for the two towers, all the metal that's sitting there, somebody could find thermite residue somewhere?
Well, they have.
I mean, there's a lot of talk, a lot of knowledge, but nobody does anything.
I have a roll-in that I didn't bring with me, but Stephen Jones, the physics professor from Brigham Young University, who sometime in the middle of last year, I believe, was the one, oh no, it was almost 2 years ago now, first discovered the residue of thermite in all of the Manhattan debris. Chemical analysis proved that was thermite. Now they've just found chips of unexploded thermite in the residue. So that's the latest development. As of December 15th, it was first made public. The information is out there. It's almost overwhelming. See these books on my table? These 3 books right here are the main ones that you should really look at as far as getting the information out. This is the Webster Tarpley book.
Excuse me for a minute.
Sure.
Books aren't going to answer the question. American men and women are.
Well,
it's time to do something besides put books in front of them.
The problem, everybody, that's one thing. Everybody oh, did he hang up? We must have lost him. Anyway, everybody has an epiphany moment, a different type of epiphany moment. You know, some people watch the, there's another call. Go ahead, caller. Well.
Hello?
Yeah, there you are.
There I am. Okay. Okay, a couple of comments.
Sure.
First thing is, how come you have a really loud buzz? It's real hard to hear you.
Uh-oh.
Second of all, the fellow before you that said nobody does anything, that's a bad statement, and I think it's a bad attitude, because many people do stuff, do things. The third thing is, which of the books that you have in front of you do you recommend for someone? Well, just what one would you recommend?
Well, this one right here is the definitive book by David Ray Griffin called A New Pearl Harbor, and that one literally exposes as a fraud almost every aspect of the official story. Crossing the Rubicon right here by Michael Rupert is probably the most data-packed book you'll ever find on the subject. Michael Rupert was the police officer who actually busted the CIA for running drugs in the 70s. He was a LA narcotics officer. His life was more or less ruined by the fact that he caught them at it, but in the meantime, he's written a text that could be used to actually prosecute people in this mass murder. That's all you can call it. But if you want to know this book right here, with the author that we just had, Webster Tarpley, A Synthetic Terror, that book actually goes into the whys and how and you know, the methodology and the reasoning behind all this. How could it possibly be? Everybody has that problem of, you know, our country wouldn't do such a thing. They're perfectly willing to accept the idea that third world countries can have coup d'etats, but not America. We had a coup d'etat in 2001. But yes, they're signaling me in the room.
Okay. So if I was fat, dumb, and happy, what could I do about all of this mess?
Well, you know, most people don't even realize it, but there's 9/11 truth movements everywhere you look. Portland has a 9/11 truth movement that's really active. You need to check out your, you know, anything. Let's put it this way. No matter what your hot button might be, whether it's ecology or that would include environment, of course, global warming, or whether you're talking about imperialism or aggression or war, you know, any one of your hot buttons, it all hinges on 9/11. Everything got amplified the wrong direction after 9/11, and we have to, as a crux of everything, you have to expose 9/11 as the fraud it was, so that people begin to understand that it was a tool to get everything else that followed it. And we need to talk to people like that, get them to understand that it's really happening. And I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I guess you just kind of have to make it something that you do, that you're aware of, that you in your
really
daily life.
That's really true. And one of the problems is that people think there isn't any information out here. And I've got more books in the box on the floor. Every one of these books is related to 9/11 or the situation that got us there. This is a really good one that I recommend. This one's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. John Perkins. He explains, how did we get the empire where we have 700 military bases in 130 countries, and how is it that our people don't consider that an empire? But the Economic Hitman book explains how they use the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to extend unpayable loans to third world countries, knowingly unpayable, similar to the crisis that we have here with our housing bubble or the crumbling dollar. But when the country winds up not being able to pay, then the economic hitmen move in and say, well, listen, we might forgive the debt if you vote with us in the next UN thing, or if you let us put troops in your country, or if you go along with us, you know, and that's how we extend our empire. It's not just like the Romans where you have to march troops in, although the neocons, that's about the only way they relate. And we're about to invade Iraq. There's over 10,000 sites planned for attacking Iraq to take out their infrastructure, their nuclear capabilities, their army, their leadership, their political leadership. We already have, by reports from people like Robert Fisk, we have knowledge that the I got distracted by this. We're changing microphones so we have good audio. With any luck, this will work. Can you hear me better now?
Okay, well, I'm going to have to go now, so I thank you, Mr. Bill.
Can you hear me, though?
And keep up the good work.
Okay. I was trying to see if the microphone was fixed enough so you could hear me. Oh, yeah, what I was starting to say is that we have special ops forces in Iran right now that are placing explosives where they figure they can't hit with bombs. And we're already we got all kinds of bad sound in here. Well, I'm going to go ahead and roll in the next video. This is a...
Hello?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, caller.
Hello.
Go ahead, caller.
Is that me?
Yeah, that's you.
Yes, first time I've seen your show. Just wondered if it's a new show and what your programming schedule is like. Is it once a month, once a week? What is it?
Every 2 weeks, every other Saturday. So 2 weeks from now, we'll be live again, this same time and same channel. But next week, it'll be rebroadcast Tuesday at 10 p.m. on 23 and Thursday at 3 p.m. on 22. I might have those channels reversed, but those are the replay dates. You'll be able to see this on Google also. But yeah, live again next week, or 2 weeks from now, and we'll have live call-in again, and it seems to work I run out of things to say sometimes. The videos do the best job, but
well, it's an excellent show, and I want to encourage you to stay with it. I'd like to answer the question that the first caller posed about why aren't people doing anything, or more accurately, why aren't more people doing something? And it gets directly to an area of interest that I have, and that is the psychological response to 9/11. And I think the reason, obviously, it's going to take many more numbers of people to really...
Yeah, the mass hypnosis.
Yes, to effectively fight this big machine that you've described already and that Webster Tarpley was talking about. The reason that there aren't more people involved, I would submit to you, is because of the fact that to look at the truth about 9/11, that the interviewer for Tarpley kept asking him, well, if this is all true, my God, what do we do then? And that is the psychological barrier that we're facing. The people in this country obviously do not want to face something as uncomfortable as a 9/11 truth, because what it does is it challenges the very foundation of the capitalist empire that America stands for, and that's a very uncomfortable truth to have to face.
Yeah, and people, really connect to that word capitalism as if they are part of it. Most people are, laborers or workers, not capitalists.
Right, and we're living in this American dream world. The term American dream is something that you and I both grew up with, I'm sure. And it's really an American dream world. It's all based on fallacy. You look at the Federal Reserve printing fiat money, which is money that has absolutely nothing to back it up. But we accept that as being the way that things are done, not knowing that it's basically a big scam. And so I would suggest to your first caller that the reason that more people aren't doing something is because a lot of people who even are least bit curious about something like this, some people are just incurious and they go about their lives and don't really realize what's going on in the world around them. But there are people that are curious, but when they start to look into 9/11 truth, they start to come up to very uncomfortable circumstances. And at that point, a lot of them say, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to know anymore.
Right. Yeah, and you're talking about the epiphany moment. At what point do they realize, oh, shit, it really is this bad?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Now, I talked to one fellow, and he saw Aaron Russo's Freedom to Fascism, and I recommend that for everybody. And he got his epiphany moment from that. Another one said just seeing Bush sit there like a deer in the headlights during, while he's reading that goat story to the kids, he said seeing that inactivity, and that was enough for him, And I'd like to ask people in general, call in, tell me, what was your epiphany moment? When did you first decide that, there really was an inside job?
My epiphany moment was when I saw Building 7 come down for the first time on videotape, and it was replayed and replayed and replayed, and at that point I realized, my God, there was government complicity. There had to be. Yeah,
because Arabs in Tora Bora or wherever cannot place explosives in those three buildings.
Right.
Furthermore, they can't make our whole military, the most fantastic defense system in the world, stand down for over 2 hours.
And the Pentagon, the building that probably has better protected airspace than any building in the entire world, was basically invaded by supposedly a amateur pilot in a huge aircraft and made some spectacular maneuvers to hit the Pentagon.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these questions, that are just absolutely ludicrous when you look into them. But to make one point, and then I'll let another person have a chance, I would recommend to your viewers to get a hold of a DVD called Zeitgeist, which is available free on the internet. They've already downloaded millions of copies of it, and it ties all this together in three parts. One part deals with 9/11, one part deals with religion, which is probably the most effective programming that you can describe, and the third part is about the Federal Reserve scam. So it actually puts all this stuff together in a very understandable way.
Right on. Well, thanks for calling, and be sure to check in 2 weeks from now. Yeah. And we got another caller. Another caller?
Hello there, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Can you hear me?
All right, I have a few things I would like to say. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of the callers that are calling today. It's very important that we stay on top of this because it's just the United States of America is going to lose its value in the whole if we don't make our future better than our past. Just want to get on with it. The cost of meeting America's ever-increasing wants and needs is driving the nation to the poorhouse. War abroad and social programs at home are devouring the United States resources, even while the hungry wolf of inflation is at the door of the average citizen struggling to pay this month's bills. Now, my source, David Walker, says, who is the head of the United States Government Accountability Office, recently warned back in May 2007 that the United States of America is underwater to the tune of $50 trillion. 50 trillion.
Yeah, actually, I've heard estimates
and
a lot more than that.
And that number is going up $3 and $4 trillion a year.
Well, speaking of economy, I've got an excellent roll-in that I'd like to roll in now. And you should check this one out, caller. It was shown originally on Keith Olbermann, and it was it's put out by blimptv.net. It's the new Bush coins. You'll really enjoy this, I think.
Uncle Sam says, turn in your coins. Now that President Bush has declared martial law, it will be illegal to be in possession of precious metals after the first of the year. That's why all citizens are urged to redeem their coins at any of the over 48,000 Halliburton service stations throughout the United States. We call it Operation Change for the Better, and for good reason. First, the new money is based on a petroleum standard, so the coins will appear in gallon denominations instead of dollars, which makes sense since that's where most of your income goes anyway. Let's familiarize ourselves with the new coin, starting with the 10-gallon denomination, which features the president's mother, Barbara Bush, who will forever be remembered for single-handedly changing the world's perspective by noting that the refugees of Hurricane Katrina were better off after the disaster than before. This happy fact is memorialized on the reverse with the adorable image of two lost children paddling past the Superdome. The 5-gallon coin celebrates our comatose press and the 5th anniversary of Larry King's momentous interview with Elizabeth Taylor on the eve of the Iraq War. This coin is also known as the buffaloed press nickel because of the American bison on the reverse butting heads with the liberal media. The 1-gallon coin, or the Condi, honors Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, whose solution to Middle East conflict is summarized on the reverse, piping Persia for peace. The half-gallon coin, or the Scalia, depicts the Supreme Court justice against a backdrop of uncounted Florida ballots. While on the reverse, presidential advisor Karl Rove celebrates the modern miracle of electronic voting. Finally, there's the 1-cup coin, or the Bracero, honoring the millions of aliens the president welcomed into the American labor pool. It features the unknown Bracero on the front, while on the back, more illegals jump the border and Roger Clark Wilson's Gateway to Servitude. Yes, a fitting tribute to big business's final triumph over organized labor. The larger denominations begin with the 25-gallon Royal Limbaugh. Celebrating uniformity of speech, it features a Greco-Roman interpretation of commentators Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity, and Ann Coulter under the banner One Media, One Voice. The 50-gallon coin pays homage to Donald Rumsfeld and the concept of democracy at gunpoint. The 75-gallon coin features Vice President Cheney and the creed for which he's dedicated the bulk of his public life, In Greed We Trust. On the reverse, an American eagle and the price of gas engage in a symbolic race for the moon. Finally, there's the 100-gallon coin, or the Bush doubloon. The presidential credo, fighting terrorism by creating it, is featured. While on the reverse, the events of 9/11 are recalled under the motto, lest they forget, we'll remind. Here, a new World Trade Center rises from the ashes of the Pentagon, crusted by the men of Iwo Jima. On the right, Vice President Cheney is seen canceling North American fighter cover. While on the left, the president reads My Pet Goat to Florida kindergartners. Yes, it's a vivid snapshot of that fateful day, captured for all time in 100% depleted uranium. Be among the first to redeem coins worth 100 gallons or more and receive this limited edition doubloon featuring President Bush along with Presidents Hoover and Harding, kindred leaders who also labored under a plundered economy. Yes, it's out with the old, in with the new. Operation Change for the Better from the United States government and Halliburton, working together to round up every cent you have.
That was from blimptv.net. And we got a caller, so go ahead, caller. Thanks for waiting. Hello, caller? Looks like the caller got lost there. Oh, there's one. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Oh, yes. I just want to say, basically, we live in a corporate oligarchy. And it's totally fascist, and it's global. It's not just the Bushes, although there is the Bush dynasty.
The Bushes are just the puppets. They aren't really controlling. They're slopping at the trough. I mean, the senior Bush The Bushes have been involved in financing both sides of wars back past World War II. You know, Prescott Bush was busted for aiding the Nazis, and ordered by the courts to cease and desist, and the evidence shows that he didn't stop his involvement with Nazi-based companies until 1950s. Yeah,
that's all on Infowars.com.
Yeah, Alex Jones.
My solution. This is my solution. My opinion. This is the way that if Martin Luther King, Gandhi, or JFK, or Wellstone, or any of those folks were around today, and John Lennon especially, he wouldn't be keeping quiet.
Right, you got to speak out.
Deal, man.
Well, what was your epiphany moment?
My solution to this is to stop shopping. Don't buy the plasma TV and now buy now, pay later. They're killing us this way. They're killing us with the Federal Reserve System.
You know, there's all kinds of ways to fight against it, and that's one of them. And one important thing is for activists to remember every way that we fight is good.
Yes,
I mean,
without
the violence,
farmers,
of course.
Even if you have to pay more. If these Walmarts take over, we'll buy their cheap garbage from China, which is slave labor. We are supporting slave labor.
Well, hey, Webster,
I'm guilty. I'm not rich. I go down there, I buy a pair of pants, I wear them out.
Well, we have an economic
trend.
We have an economic meltdown right now, and Webster Tarpley, the video that we showed a little while back, Webster Tarpley has a great thing. You should look it up on the internet. It's called the Philadelphia Platform, the Draft Emergency Economic Recovery Program to stop the Bush Depression. The first part starts out: stop all foreclosures immediately for at least 5 years. Second part: raise the federal minimum wage immediately to a living wage of at least $15 an hour, with a short-term goal of attaining federal minimum wage of at least $20 per hour. It goes on with 18 points here, including implementing changes so that everybody can have health care, making it a constitutional amendment, as a matter of fact, to guarantee that people have health care. And it goes on and on. 18 points. I highly recommend you check it out, the Philadelphia Platform.
Well, with the dollar dropping rapidly, and they're lying, and they're saying, well, obviously they're lying on the media. They're saying they're protecting the dollar. The dollar's worth this much. It's dropping.
Well, they're definitely scrambling right now. Dick Cheney is moving to Dubai. He's already bought a home, and he's transferred, the last time I checked, it was $25 million of his assets to Dubai banks. He's running. He doesn't want to be prosecuted for war crimes, and Dubai won't.
He's immunified himself.
Well,
totally.
Yeah, right. I don't think that making a law for yourself that. Uh-oh, we lost him. Well, anyway, I was just going to say that's kind of like ex post facto. George Bush adding after the fact, and by the way, I can't be prosecuted for what I just did. We'll call bullshit on that. That can easily be reversed. It's just you can't make yourself immune from criminal activity. I don't know. Anyway, I'll read some more points here. We have the number up. Oh, we have another phone call. 2 more phone calls. I don't hear anybody. Hello, caller. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Right on. The epiphanal moment on this 9/11 thing that I had many epiphanies on a lot of things this government has done. But the moment that made it clear for me was when Michael Rupert came to Portland State in November of 2001, and basically listed just exactly the players, how they played, and what the mechanisms were in place to cause something like this. And I haven't read the book yet, but I did see on Public Access TV his presentation at Portland State, and it was incredible. And I was wondering if possibly it could be replayed again at some point, whether it's on your program or in a filler the presentation that Michael Rupert gave at Portland State.
I can at least show part of it. You know, we have a limited time with an hour, but I have put on other things like Richard Gage, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, let me show his blueprint for 9/11 destruction, or whatever the name of that was. But I got an hour and a half show. And
I did see that one. I believe you played that one in 2 parts.
Yeah.
And it was great. And I thank you for your program. Keep it up, and I look forward to more.
Hey, cable access is really great. They're showing it lots of other times. They use my shows for filler. They like them so much. And it's popular. I get a lot of compliments on it, but I'm not looking for compliments. I'm looking for action.
I thank you very much.
Thank you. We got another phone call. Go ahead. Oh, well, sorry that they didn't have a chance to talk, but I'll go ahead and read some more of this draft emergency economic recovery program to stop the Bush Depression. Number 3, one of the most important ones, immediate enactment of a security transfers tax, or Tobin tax, of 1% to be imposed on all financial turnover in all financial markets, to include the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, the Amex, the Chicago Board of Trade, the Chicago Board Options Exchange, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the market in federal securities, the foreign exchange market, the New York Mercantile. You get the idea. Every place that money transactions are had, 1% comes off the top. It'll help fund, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and so on. I was looking. No other callers. We have about, we only have about a minute left before we go into the end credits. Implement Medicare for all in the form of a single-payer, universal coverage, publicly administered system. Number 6, simultaneously enact comprehensive income tax relief for working families, raising the standard deduction, etc. Number 7, nationalize the Federal Reserve and establish it as a bureau of the United States Treasury. The current privatized status of the Federal Reserve System constitutes a violation of the United States Constitution. Number 8, federally sponsored infrastructure projects will include new nationwide network of magnetic levitation railways and so on. Number 9, comprehensive re-regulation of entire financial and banking system, including repealing the Taft-Hartley Act. Number 10, free college for qualified students. Number 11, announce the intention of the United States to abrogate NAFTA, WTO, and all other international free trade agreements that have destroyed employment in this country. Well, we're just about to go on out. Anyway, again, the Philadelphia platform, one of the most comprehensive plans for how do we get out of this. We need to immediately stop all foreclosures. The banks are already bankrupt. There's no need for them to drag everybody down with them. And I hope you guys like this show. Call back again 2 weeks from today. And I'll try to put on a bunch of interesting roll-ins. In the meantime, enjoy this exit video. It's by John Kellerman, called A New Pearl Harbor.
If you get your views from television news, you'll only hear stories that corporations choose. You'll only get to see what they want you to see. You're gonna have to read and decide what you believe. We all watched in horror 911. The planes hit the towers and the towers came down. Did you ever wonder how they fell so fast? Well, maybe that's a question that we're not supposed to ask. Don't you think it's strange? There were no fighter jets. Did someone give the order not to intercept? And if they really scrambled, then why'd they fly so slow? Maybe there's an answer that we don't want to know. And where was our president? George W., that fool. He was visiting with children at an elementary school. And when he heard the news, he didn't seem concerned. He just calmly read a picture book while all those people burned. The Bushes and Bin Ladens. Now what's that all about? While all of us were grounded, they flew his family out. Osama got his training from the CIA. Our soldiers took Afghanistan, they let him slip away. A new Pearl Harbor was their big chance to launch 2 wars that they'd planned in advance. Now we know they lied about weapons in Iraq. Did they allow the 9/11 attack? If you get your views from television news, you'll only hear stories that corporations choose. You'll only get to see what they want you to see. You're gonna have to read and decide what you believe.